Is it gonna work? Is it gonna work? Thank you. A few more of you have put in the chat. So we've got Ikman, who is the mom of, oh, I'm not sure if I know how to say this student's name, Munsahaj, who's in the 3rd grade. So Ikman, this is really a meeting for leading edge families, but you are certainly welcome to join us and be part of this conversation. We're sort of, oh, and now it's showing me. Okay. Thank you. A few more of you have put in the chat. Mute. So there we go. Okay. All right. Can you guys give me a thumbs up? Can we see the slides now again? All right, cool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We don't have too many people here yet, but I think we're going to have some folks join us. Oh, I'm glad she's in 6th grade. I was going to say, I'm like, you're welcome to join us, but she's not here quite yet. Yay, 6th graders. So we have a lot of 6th grade families here and a couple of 7th and 8th grade families as well. Hopefully some more folks will join us. Like I mentioned, we have Ms. Curtis here. Ms. Curtis is our social emotional counselor that she works with all of the Black Rock Academies, but specifically she works with Leading Edge and PFAA, and she's also, if I may say, Ms. Curtis, the parent to a high schooler and a college student. So while she doesn't currently have middle schoolers, she has survived the middle school years, which, as a person on the other side of that with a preschooler, I'm just in awe. I'm like, good job. Good job, Ms. Curtis. Our topic for tonight is going to be supporting each other so that we can support our kids. When I did our survey of you all and sort of asked like what do you need help with, this was a big topic that almost half of you said, I need help figuring out how to like motivate and support my students like kind of globally. And I think also just based on some of the feedback that I get from people and, to be frank, some of the crying phone calls to my office that occasionally happen, and it's okay, that's perfectly normal. We need to make sure that we're helping one another with these things. And so that's sort of our topic for today. And so I want to start by just starting with this idea, and it's like a very simple image, but starting with this idea that, we have all these different stakeholders. We have the school, which is sort of like a global sense, but I'm going to say me for the moment. There's other people supporting me in doing this, but we have the school, and the school's job is really to support staff and parents, or staff and families, in supporting their students, right? Like ultimately our goal is that students are learning and growing and thriving, and like I don't get to teach them directly anymore, though sometimes I get to interact with them. So really like the school's job is to support our teachers and our staff, and also you guys, in working together to support our students. Our teachers will sometimes take a role in supporting our families as well, and probably vice versa. Like, let's be honest, like teacher appreciation and all those things, they matter a lot. But together our goal is always for our students. So what I really wanted to focus on tonight though is this part, like your role, as families and parents and aunties and grandparents and uncles and all of the people that may be supporting our kids right now. Our role has changed tremendously in the last 6 months, right? What I used to say is get your kid to school, make sure they're fed, great. Like pretty much there we go, right? There was obviously a little more to it, but now it's immensely more complicated, and partly because our ability to support your students has diminished a little bit. We can't see them, we can't touch them, I can't like corral them in a room and make them do stuff, which honestly right now sometimes I really wish I could do. But you're also there with them, and you're seeing them. I mean, during the normal school year, we would be with them 8 hours of the day, which is maybe more than you would be seeing them, but that's really different now. And so our plan for tonight is really to target how do we as family members continue to support our students, but also support ourselves so that we can do that. And I mentioned that when I sent you guys this survey, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, I asked, as a parent, the thing you most need help or training with is, and there was this big green one. And almost half of you said, and I know you can't read it, said, but knowing how to coach my student around all things in distance learning. And then when you dug into all these little ones, it was like, okay, there's Schoology, and then there's assignments, but then there's also they're sad and they're disconnected from their friends, and gosh, they're just sitting in their room. Is that okay? Are they allowed to do that? Do they have to do their hair in the morning? I mean, like there's a lot of feeling of like, oh my goodness, I don't know exactly what my role is. So that's kind of what we're going to try to focus on tonight. And we're going to focus on that in like 4 areas. Like, how do you support your kids with their academic needs? We'll go through that super quick because we really focused on that at our last meeting. And if you want to go into detail on that, you can go back and watch our last meeting, but we'll do like a quick recap. We'll talk a little bit about how to support your kids with their social and emotional needs. And that's why Ms. Curtis is here to jump in and give us some suggestions. We're going to make sure we are talking about supporting ourselves, because this year, if it was ever true, this is a big year for make sure you're putting, your mask on you first, your seatbelt's not on, all of those important things. And then hopefully we'll get to talk a little bit about how we can maybe increase our ability in our community to support one another. Really all throughout this, I'm going to ask this question: what's working for you in these areas? And so I'm hoping that we'll also be able to give each other some ideas. So please, as we're talking, be ready to, or feel free to jump into either the chat or unmute yourself and, tell us what's working for you, because none of us have done this before. It is all brand new. With that, I'm going to remind everybody who joined a few minutes late that we are recording this meeting. So if you don't want your image to appear, make sure you turn your camera off, but it's just going to our Leading Edge YouTube channel. So most importantly, this is what I need to make sure that everybody sees. And I sent this message out about a week ago, and I hope some of you got it and got to watch my little video. But I remember, and Ms. Curtis has heard me talk about this a lot, I remember when I was a new parent and I had an infant, and I'm fortunate enough to live in a community that has this amazing new parent support group. And I remember going, like, Sam was 3 weeks old and I don't think I'd left the house yet. And, I could barely walk, recovering from delivery, and like somehow getting him into the car and somehow getting into the support group, and having this group of other new moms to talk to. And the most important thing that I remember taking from that was that everybody's like, you're doing fine. Yes, it's super hard, but you're doing fine. And you're probably doing more than fine. So that's what I want to make sure that everybody here knows. You are showing up. We are having this conversation. Like I said, your child is learning in some way. Your child is fed. Your child is healthy. Your child is safe. Good job. The rest of it is icing. And we'll totally talk through all that icing, but I really want to emphasize, like, you're doing a good job, and want to make sure everybody kind of gives themselves a little pat on the back. Okay. But I know that's not really what you came here to hear me say. So let's start with academics. And again, I'm going to ask you to think about like what's working for you, and maybe put it in the chat in a minute. So these are the 3 things that I talked about last week. And I'm not going to go into super detail about them, because if you want super detail about them, you can watch the YouTube version of this from our last meeting 2 weeks ago. But I said with academics, there's sort of 3 things that you can do as a parent that can help your kids. One is making sure they're in class and completing their assignments. That's sort of the attendance piece. One is that business items. Every week when I send out the weekly updates, there's some business items. Clearly, those of you in this meeting are good at those because you're here. Good job. But that's where I'm trying to make it super simple. These are the things you absolutely need to know. So making sure you're aware of those. And then the third one is setting up that time once a week to check Schoology with your student. They're middle schoolers. They can do it with you. In fact, they probably should be. To look for missing assignments, check on their grades, and really talk to them about, all right, what are your next steps? How do I go talk to my teachers? Do I go to office hours? That sort of thing. So my question I'm going to ask for you guys is, what's been working for you in this area of academics, and what questions do you still have? And I'll give everybody a minute. You can either put a question or an answer in the chat, or you can unmute and let us know kind of what you're thinking on this front. But on the front of supporting your kids with their academics, what's been working, and or what questions or needs do you still have? And we'll see how we can address them. This is where I'm hoping everybody will jump in, because otherwise it's gonna be a really boring meeting.
So this is Gabrielle. I'm the parent, aunt of Ciasia Baisley, and she's an 8th grader, first year here at the charter school. My son attended the charter school years ago. What has worked well for us, my son just graduated from university and is back home for a year before going on to medical school. And
Good
so
job.
I'm not a mathematician. She has needed quite a bit of support with math. So they sit down together 3 nights a week so she can learn from him on the math. And then from a Schoolology perspective, I try to make it a habit. Last week was not good because of my work schedule, but try to make it a habit just to have her sit down and explain to me, going into Schoolology, looking at the grades and her assignments, what she's doing in each of the class, and just talking to me about her day. And I think that's helped immensely.
Awesome. I love hearing both of those things. I love the like bringing some other people into the equation, and they don't necessarily have to be people in your household, right? It might be like you and your buddy, your next door neighbor, like swap. Like I actually do this. We sit across the street and I chat with my neighbor's kids, and because she just needs somebody else to talk to them sometimes, right? And so maybe it's a kid in your house, maybe it's another friend or family member that can get on the phone. But I love that. I love that, taking the thing that's stressful and sharing that load. I also love hearing the like getting your kid to explain it to you. Goodness, I know that's hard, but if you can set that up as a routine, it's awesome. In the chat, Marikar says the weekly Schoology check isn't enough for her and her kiddo, so they check every day, and it really helps her stay on top of your kid's work. Obviously, do what makes sense for your kid, and younger kids probably need to check more often than bigger kids, but it's going to depend. Ms. Curtis, can I ask, how often do you check your child's Schoology? Am I allowed to ask that question?
Oh, no.
No, don't ask that question.
So I don't check Schoology, I check PowerSchool.
Well.
I cheat a little bit just because I'm already in the system, but yes, I should definitely check Schoology more often.
When your kiddos were in middle school, did you check with them or on your own, or have them check on their own? How did you guys work that out?
So I feel like we didn't have Schoology when my oldest one was there. And so that was much easier. It was just PowerSchool. And I believe we did more of a weekly kind of a check-in. My older one doesn't need it quite as much. She's more on top of things than I am. I'm actually learning from her, but yeah, I think I did weekly with my older one.
Yeah. So, whatever works for your kid. I think it's just that habit of like doing that checking on where we're at. Marikar says, I also make my son compose an email to his or her teacher before, and then you check it before they send it. Oh my goodness, bless you. Thank you. Because we get some emails that clearly were composed by a 7th grader at crazy times of the night, and yes, that's really awesome. That's also a great way to actually help improve their writing skills, because you're supporting them in that. Anybody else have anything that they want to share that's either working for them or that's not, and you want to see if the team has any ideas?
So I'm new to Schoology. I'm very fluent with Google Classroom. And so I just sat down for, I think this is the second time of really looking at Schoology and getting my daughter to help explain it to me. But where is the best place for us as parents? How it's laid out, it doesn't seem like there's like to-do lists that, that have, that mark off the work that they've completed. It just seems like it's all just right. It's just there. There's not that to-do list that you check off. So where's the best place for parents to be checking?
So, I have a couple thoughts on that. Let's see. If I go to here, can you guys see my Schoology? It's opening now, but okay. So, and other people, if you have better ideas, because remember, I have not been a parent in this system, but so what I do, um, so if I'm just looking at the dashboard, it's going to be pretty messy. There's going to be a lot of stuff there. So what I do, and I have a student who has given me permission to use her stuff. So I'm going to use hers for a second. I'm going to get to it a different way than you guys get to because mine looks different. But when I'm looking at this summary page where it shows me their grades, this is kind of where I recommend starting. And then what I do is I look at these grades and I say, okay, what's my threshold? Like where do I want to prioritize? Now, obviously, this kiddo probably gives me permission to use her Schoology because her Schoology is amazing. But like, what I would probably say is start with is, are there any grades that are lower than 70%? Right? That's a good place to start. 70% is passing. Okay, great. Okay, there are, then I'm going to look at that one. And when I'm looking in the grades tab, then I look, at one class at a time. And then what I do is I don't try to look at all the things. I try to scan for the big yellow missing or the big 0. And that's really what I look for. Right now, what you'll see is teachers are putting in assignments as far ahead of schedule as they possibly can, right? So like this teacher has put in like a whole week's worth of assignments. And then they're updating with zeros or missing within 48 hours of the assignment being turned in. So I actually think that no, there's not one place, but I almost want to start training the kids to go kind of class by class and say, okay, this is due tomorrow. Did I do that sort of thing? It takes a little practice. The other place that you can look is, and mine is going to look super horrible and messy because
and mine looks totally different. Like I can't even find this summary page that you're even looking at. So,
okay.
I don't want to take everybody's
no. So
Schoology, but
yeah, so that might be yes, that might be. It looks a little different from your side. I can't quite show it that way, but we can also follow up on that after. I would say check our on that YouTube page, there are some Schoology tutorials. Check on those. And if those are not enough, we can follow up one-on-one. But those are some of just the criteria that I would encourage people to look at is like, what's your threshold? Like, and if your threshold is 100% of everything all the time, I'm going to encourage you to maybe ask if that's the necessary threshold that you need to be at right now and that we all need to be at right now. We're going to talk about that a little bit. That like what's doable right now in this context is probably not a bad thought process to be having. So Sarah, we can get into more details with that, but that's kind of a basic view of what I would suggest. And then in the chat, Mari Carr says she checks weekly. She can check each weekly folder. Some assignments you can tell how it's submitted by looking at the document. Yeah, that's right. And we'll say if it's submitted. That's a good trick. And most of for our bigger kids, 7th and 8th graders, and our 6th graders are getting there, most of their assignments are submitted through Google Docs through Schoology. So that's getting more visible to you. I'm going to keep moving and sort of we can come back to this if we need to. So the next piece that I wanted to talk about is supporting our students with our social emotional needs. And again, I asked you guys this in the survey, and this was actually what your students responded. Your students responded, here are your students' responses in terms of how they're feeling about school. And what I really loved about seeing this is while our students may be, they're middle schoolers, they maybe are not emoting as much as we might like them to, or maybe they're emoting a lot more than we would like them to. They tend to be on one or the other extreme. I thought these results were really interesting. So when we asked, the kids, how often are they feeling happy and grateful? the big majority of them said almost always or frequently, and almost nobody said never. At the same time, they said that they're missing their friends and that they're lonely. So what I see from this is they're kind of balancing. Like, they miss their friends, they're occasionally mad, they're occasionally sad or tired, but they're also feeling happy and grateful. And so, sometimes they express these ones, but they'll tell us this if we ask them. So I thought that this was um, interesting data to share with you all, and also again points to the, you're doing a good job. Your kids are reporting some good things. Ms. Curtis, jump in if there's anything you want to add to this, but I sort of thought that was nice data to start with.
I feel like it's so normal. I mean, as a middle schooler and a teenager, your moods, and they just kind of switch, can on a dime. And so I think what I see on that chart, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would say that it would look dramatically different, except for maybe this lonely one, if they were on campus. Like, this is actually pretty normal data for our kiddos. So hopefully that's something that is helpful to you all. But there's sort of three things that I have want to think about when we are thinking about our school students' social emotional needs. And of course, I made this really tiny on my screen, so I can't really see everything that I just put there for you. But we want to prioritize connection, perspective, and self-care. And I kind of made these things up. They're not but they're based on my experience and based on communication with our teachers and the limited amount of research that's out there right now for COVID. These are sort of the things that we want to help kids prioritize, and we want to help ourselves prioritize as well. So connection. This is where, in whatever form, in whatever way, helping them find opportunities to connect with their peers is huge. If this was a normal year, we would have all sat down at back to school night, and I would have reminded you that teenagers, preteens, middle schoolers are completely peer centered. Their entire reality is based on their peers. And so this disconnect for them from their peers is pretty huge. So helping them to find ways to connect, whether that's electronically, whether that's on the phone, whether that's, like I was saying, like sitting across the street and yelling at each other across the driveway, those are really tremendous options. We've added a couple things just this week to help with that. We have lunchtime Zoom sessions that kids can jump into and just hang out, and they can chat with whoever's there, or they can join with their friends and they'll get put in a breakout room so they can just chat there. And then their student services team, Ms. Curtis and her team, are doing Popcorn Fridays, which is a sort of similar end of the week chat hangout time. Anything else you want to say about connection, Ms. Curtis?
The only thing that I was going to say is that, yes, those two things are being offered on campus, but some of the parents I'm hearing are, and maybe some of you guys are already doing this, but kind of doing small pod learning at home. And so the students are studying with, other students, obviously physically distanced, but in the same room, even just, at different tables. So they're still, connecting, and they're even studying together and in class together, but kind of, working independently. So there is some socializing in that way.
The second one I have here is perspective. And this is where I was talking about, like, that when you look at Schoology, you got to do some weighing of priorities. And I never want to encourage people like have lower standards or just do the bare minimum. That's okay. Those are not things that I'm going to say to you, but I am going to say that we are in a time unlike anything our students have ever experienced, and possibly unlike anything that any of us have ever experienced. And so if we aren't careful and are kind of holding ourselves to maybe the standards of perfection or idealism that we've been at before, we're going to drive ourselves cuckoo crazy. And I can imagine that everyone here has done that at least once since March. I certainly have, when it comes to my parenting, like, oh my goodness, like we were trying to potty train at the beginning of this pandemic, and you can imagine how crazy I was going with that. And so just being mindful of how can you set goals and expectations that are reasonable for you and for your family and for your kid. And that's going to look different for every kid. But the motto that we've had among the staff is intention, not perfection, right? So setting good intentions, setting strong intentions, but feeling comfortable with it not being perfect, because this is brand new for all of us. Yeah. Anything that you would want to say about that, Ms. Curtis?
I just want to echo what you said, that our world is upside down. And so having realistic expectations, I think, is really important. And sometimes, our best is enough. And yes, things are not going to be perfect. None of our environments are perfect. And so, just doing the best that we can right now and being okay with that is important.
And then the last one here is self-care, which I feel like has become this weird buzzword, and I don't know how to avoid that, but it is what it is. And our students, particularly again, our middle schoolers, they don't know how to take care of themselves yet. Like, this is actually something that they will need some support in figuring out. And that might be conversations with them like, hey, do you want to go for a walk? And then afterwards, how did that feel to get outside? Did that feel good? Awesome. I'm like, let's do more of that. We're trying to support that through the PE assignments every Wednesday. The PE assignment is a different kind of self-care option, and helping kids to reflect on like, oh, like maybe I like to get up and walk the dog, or maybe I like to get up and do some yoga, or maybe I like to get up and just sit quietly by myself. We're trying to really build some tools for them with that. But I would say this is going to be really critical. It's going to help them have that perspective. It's going to help them feel more confident with that connection piece. So it's a little bit of a gateway to the other two. You guys can predict. My next slide is going to say, how are you also doing the self-care for yourself and modeling it for yourself, so that you're able to have that space. Again, with my 4-year-old, he really wants to get up when I get up at 5 a.m. And I keep saying to him, like, no, this is my time. Like, this is, mama gets her own time. And he's very confused by this, but my hope is that I can model for him that you need to take care of yourself. And that's really, really important. So, same question that we asked earlier. In this area, what is working for you and what are you still struggling with? And feel free to, like I said, either unmute or ask in the chat, and we'll see what great ideas we can generate for everybody. Yeah, I like that they have to sweat before playing video games. I love that. And sweating is stinky business with middle schoolers, so good for you. Any other, give everybody a minute to add some thoughts here.
I know when I talk with students, I always encourage them to add that self-care in as homework as well. So they spend a lot of time in front of the screen and in class and doing classwork and assignments. And I encourage them to 15 minutes, half hour, whatever they can spare. That needs to be on their schedule. The self-care needs to be on their schedule as well. It's just as important.
Can I ask, of these 3 things, which do you think are hardest for our students right now? Which are you seeing at home are the ones that are challenging for your kiddos?
I would say the self-care, because both my husband and I are working full-time as well. So it's, and we have 4 kids that are all doing distance learning also. And we're trying to manage it all. And I have a little bit more flexibility in my schedule than my husband. So Sophia, I have an open door policy that if they see I'm not on a Zoom and they come in, she comes in about 3 or 4 times throughout the day just to give me a hug. And it's, I have to take it while I can with my preteen. But just like keeping that open for her, because I know that if she's coming in to give me that hug, she's definitely needing it. And some days it's more than others, but having that open door because I can't really check on her throughout the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. I think that like, and that's a really important thing to emphasize. Self-care doesn't have to be like a whole routine, right? Like it doesn't have to be like a whole exercise routine or meditation routine. It might just be like, hey, did you take 5 minutes? Did you take 5 minutes to like take a couple deep breaths this morning? It might be that your self-care is actually like eating breakfast as a family, if that works for you. It might be because that also is going to be your connection time. It might also be the time you get to have some of that perspective taking. So by no means do either Miss Curtis or I think that you need to like carve out 90 minutes a day to make all these things happen. Um, maybe it's that you guys have a family gratitude practice that you talk about, and just keeping it small and keeping it simple, I think is important. Sarah, the other Sarah on this call also mentioned that self-care is really important. So we'll see if we can, and difficult. So we'll see if we can continue to make this visible to our kiddos. We're also trying to encourage things like stretch breaks and movement breaks throughout the class day, and some other pieces like that. So we'll see if we can jump in a few more of those. And too many things open. So the next piece of this, just moving on, is that idea of supporting yourself. And so now this is the data that parents reported about, like, of the past couple of weeks. How have we been feeling? And again, I want to say, like, everybody, you're doing a good job, because overall, even though it's frustrating, even though it's hard, we're finding those moments of happy and grateful. Yes, we're frustrated sometimes, but it's not all the time for most of us. And we're building our confidence in our ability to support our students. And one of the things that we see over and over and over again is where you are at as adults will be reflected in how your students receive any new situation. And so, it's just like you sometimes see the teachers on the Zoom meetings just trying to be super zen and patient while they, the kid logs on for the 72nd time. I know that's what you all are doing. And so I know that it's not all roses, and I know that everybody is having those moments of frustration. But I'm very impressed with our community and how we're working through those. The same rules apply, right? We want to make sure we're having connection. I personally got to talk to some friends on the phone a couple nights ago, and it was like mind blowing. I'm like, oh, people other than my husband and my 4-year-old. This is amazing. Also perspective, like, we all have to figure out what can we let go of. Mine might be laundry, for example. Like, it's just not always happening, but whatever that is that you have to let go of to give yourself space. Self-care, and I recognize that's been extra hard with the smoke, but there actually looks like a little bit of blue sky out there today, so maybe we'll have some more space here. But then the last one that I want to add for us as adults is this idea of find your team or find your squad. This is something we've been talking about a lot with the staff. Like, who are your people that you go to when you are like, I don't know what to do? And you'll see I keep like looking over here, because over here I have my phone, and on my phone is a group chat with our whole staff. And seriously, throughout the day, you'll see them going, oh no, I don't know how to do blah, 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 blah. And then somebody will come back up with, oh, here's how you do it. Here's how you fix it. And there's your team. There's your squad who can really have your back. And this morning we were in our staff meeting. That came out very strongly, that every problem that somebody has come up with, somebody else on the team has a solution. And so I guess one of the things we're going to talk about in a few minutes is how we build that squad amongst our parent community. But I'm curious, like, I don't feel like anybody here, we're all adults, you need to be like disclose your whole personal self-care routine, but particularly around this idea of who do you go to? I'm curious as to what ideas people have for who do you go to? Like, where in our community are you finding resources? Are you finding that team that might be good support for you? And as you're thinking about that and either answering in the chat or out loud, Ms. Curtis, do you have anything else you would want to add to this one?
I don't a whole lot, just how important it is for us to be taking care of ourselves. And as you mentioned earlier, without us taking care of ourselves, we're role modeling for our kids, of course. And yeah, we've got to put our mask on first. So super important. And then, yes, we've got to have a squad to help us through this.
Mhm. So anybody have any thoughts on this one that they want to share? I know this one's hard. It's about us and not our kids, and so it's a little personal. So it's okay if you're not feeling comfortable. But a couple people have said that meditation and mindfulness are really important to them. If anybody knows the Calm app, it is like my favorite thing in the entire world and will give you quick little 10-minute meditations. There's a few other resources like that. We actually use them with the kids as well. Um,
So, Mrs. Goldman, this is Gabrielle. This is one of the areas that I need understanding, and I'm looking forward to learning from you and your team here on the squad. I have my squad outside of the school, but I feel as if there's still a disconnect because
mhm.
I don't know who to go to other than the staff in terms of the parent community. And
Yeah.
it would be ideal to have that link or be linked into the parent community. Likewise, for my child, she's doing awesome. Has been quite an introvert, but is blossoming in these breakout groups
Mhm.
and finding connections. And I asked her the other day. I said, "Have you reached out to exchange numbers?" And she's like a little reluctant to do that. But she had a question the other night, and the only thing she thought of is to email the teacher. But she said, I wished I could, reach out to my fellow classmate that I've become friends with.
Yeah.
And so, how do we build those connections so that we can be successful in having our squad when we need it?
Totally. So the answer with the kids, I have less of a solid answer on, but I will ask the teachers if they have any thoughts on how they might want to exchange that information. One of the secret things that you may or may not know is that if your student is in their NCS email account and they start typing in somebody's name, staff or student, it'll auto populate with that person's email address. So maybe they're not like confident enough to like ask, so, hey, new friend, can I have your phone number? They all technically have each other's email addresses and they can communicate that way to start with. They can email each other. They can't email outside of NCS, but they can email each other. And that can be kind of uh like a kind of secret way to sneak in that like, oh, I'm nervous. And especially it is hard because your daughter is coming in as an eighth grader and that's tough. We're going to try to get the web leaders to be working more on that, but that's something that we can definitely work on. And then hang on 2 minutes and I'm going to answer your question about how to check into the parent community because that's literally my next slide. So good job for planting that seed. Manjot says daughters have been on calls with all sorts of classmates, not sure what started it. And this is interesting. About half of our sixth graders come from STAR, but another half of them don't. So they're just starting to form those relationships. What I will say, sixth grade parents, is this is about the time we would start to see that happen normally. Like it's actually pretty normal. But one of the things maybe I will talk to teachers about leading up to fall break is maybe giving kind of some opportunities in class for like, how might you connect with your friends over fall break when we're not in class? And that might be a way to spur that along. Obviously, the school cannot share that information, but there's ways to play with it. I'm going to use that as a segue to my next piece, which is how do we find our squad within our school community? And what I'll tell you is we sort of have a group called LEAP. LEAP stands for Leading Edge Active Parents. And I won't lie, right now LEAP is a little bit like defunct at the exact moment, not because the folks that have been involved in it aren't amazing, but because I think starting in the spring, it was like, oh my goodness, what do we do? How do we do this? What does this even look like? And in terms of that setting priorities piece and, saying, okay, like what is enough? I said to all of them, you know what, y'all, like, let me take this on for right now. Let me just get the year started. And then we'll sort of build a bigger parent resource group as we're ready for it. And honestly, I just think we have had too much on our plates. As things are starting to calm down, maybe we can build some more options. But so I've had 2 suggestions from the parent community of ways that we might do this. And this is where I really need your input, because I'm a little afraid of both of these, and I need you all to help me be brave and tell me that it's all going to be okay. um, so one of these is to set up some text and email groups, like a phone a friend group within our family community. So I would send something out and you could sign up. You could say, yes, please, group me with other 8th grade parents or other 6th grade parents who are also in Miss Mindle's homeroom or something like that. And you would put your, whatever contact information you wanted, email, phone, etc. And then I would send something out to that group. Hey guys, you're now a group. Here's all your people. Here's all your contact information. You're each other's squad. Like, jump in wherever, it's yours, go with it. And that's something that I would be happy to set up, and, it would be totally voluntary. And it's then up to the families to sustain it and use it as they need. But, the school could do that work of setting it up. The other idea, and these are not either or, we could potentially do both of these. The other idea that I'm a little nervous about, more nervous about, but it's here, is having a closed Facebook group for leading edge families. Just for this year, I will be honest, I'm not ready to commit to the work of this forever, but just for this year, at least having similar to what Star Academy had, for those of you who are Star Academy parents, a closed Facebook group that you can request to be added to if you're a leading edge parent or a leading edge family member. And families in it can post questions or support ideas. I would have to approve them. We'd have to have an approval process. And that's just because it's a school sponsored thing. We want to make sure it stays positive and truthful and honest and real and all of those things. Not that anybody would intentionally make it not that way, but the world of social media is a little, things. It would be completely voluntary, but it would be more like ongoing opt-in, like at any point you could opt in. But like I said, I'm a little bit nervous. I would want us to have some conversations about what the community guidelines for that space would be. Like, what do we want from this space? And then the other thing that I'm a little nervous about is, at Star, those of you that were Star parents, people would post pictures of kids in that Facebook group. And, it was fine because it was all people making that choice for their own kids. But those are little kids, and our kids are bigger and they have distinct opinions about their pictures being shared. And, I'm curious as to how we feel about this. So I'd love to hear from anybody in the room. What do you think of these options? Which option do you think would be more effective? And particularly with the Facebook group, like, help me not be nervous. Help me not feel like, oh no, this would turn into just a ranting session that, sometimes happens in social media. I'm being honest with you guys. This is what makes me nervous. So what are your thoughts? Gabrielle said that she really liked that phone a friend idea. And I think, Kwame, that's what you were referring to as well. Other thoughts? Again, feel free to put in the chat or unmute, and we're a small enough group, so just jump in if you have ideas.
I like both options. I think the phone a friend sounds more personal. I know that with the school that my husband and I work at, that they have a Facebook page like that, like what you're talking about. And teachers are allowed to, teachers are on it, parents are on it. And, it's really great because even when, sometimes parents will come out and it does become almost like to bash a teacher or something that's happening. And the whole community comes to the rescue and says, this sounds like a big problem that you're having. This needs to be taken up with the principal, or we're commenting that way. And teachers stepping in and supporting families in that way too. But it's actually been really nice, and they've had it going for quite a few years. And yeah, so I think it can work, but it is less personal than like the phone a friend.
Thank you for that. Other thoughts?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kwame, and I have an eighth grader. And I like the idea of Facebook. My only concern about a closed Facebook group, my only concern is that it feels like you're leaving it up to chance to people to respond. And oftentimes, if you're like needing help or needing assistance, you don't want to kind of leave it to chance, which is why, for me, just the idea of being able to connect with like a small group of people who are like maybe eighth grade parents or whatever feels a little bit more um, encouraging for me. In fact, we're sitting at the table right now looking at math variables. So, so yeah, so I think I like the idea of just phoning a friend for the reasons that were mentioned before, with it being a little bit more intimate.
Yeah.
So.
I agree with that too. And knowing that the parents that you would have that connection with, that you might all the kids would be in the same homeroom together. So
Right.
wouldn't just be, connecting with somebody that might be in a completely different grade level or a different, yeah, leaving it up to chance, where it's like, that kids are spending all the time together with these other students, and it's nice having that connection with the
Right.
families.
And if you all haven't figured it out yet this year, because I'm not sure that all the kids have, the kids are cohorted together so that when we come back in hybrid, they're really cohorted with the same, 15 to 20 kids. So that could really be a very tight group of families that, can interact together for sure. Sarah says Facebook makes me nervous. It makes me nervous too. But I want to grow up, telling the kids to be brave. I'm trying to be brave also. I don't know if anybody got to see it this morning, that as part of being brave, the kids dared me to spin in circles and then try to walk a straight line around the room. It was not pretty. um, Facebook makes me more nervous than that. But Marikar said making sure things get approved by admin. I mean, I hate to feel like I have to, like, I hate to feel like I would need to do that, but I think it would be appropriate just to make sure that we're, honoring all the rules and things. Any other thoughts on this? Any other pieces that I should take into account? I definitely am going to try to get one, if not both of these up and running in the next 2 weeks. That's my personal goal.
I was wondering, Amanda, do you have already kind of like listservs for like eighth graders already set up with telephone numbers, emails, and contact folks? Do you have that already set up? Or is that something that you'd have to create?
No, I mean, I have all your contact information, but I can't share it without your permission. Right? So that's why I need people to sort of opt into wanting it to be shared. Yeah, I got a thumbs up from Kwame if you guys didn't see that. Casey says, I like the Facebook parents group like the one Star has. Yeah, I think it would be set up very similar. And it would be something that's familiar to our parents that have come from Star. Okay. All right. Well, this is good. This is making me less nervous. You guys are making me think like we could build these things and we'd find our squad and it would all be okay. So like I said, I commit to making one of these things happen between now and fall break, maybe both if I make that happen. There's a lot going on, but I commit to making one of them happen. The very last thing I have just before we hit the 6:30 and I turn into a pumpkin, AKA I have to go put my child to bed. Miss Curtis linked a bunch of resources here, and I'm wondering, Miss Curtis, do you want to just talk through this a little bit?
Sure. There's just, I added some things there. I won't say random, but there are definitely kind of I don't know, a solid, I'm not, the word's not coming to me, I guess. But anyway, it's kind of some resources for self-care, just some things. We've been doing some social emotional curriculum on campus with the kids, well, distance learning now, but, and so part of that is how parents play a role in that. So I've included a couple of things like self-regulating at home, decision-making goals, helping each other grow, those kinds of things. You can check those out. And that's just us as parents kind of role modeling, regulating our own emotions and modeling that for our kids and helping them in those areas. I also included at the very bottom is our request form. If you have a concern about your student, whether it's, not feeling motivated, whether it's you're seeing a lot of signs of, anxiety, sadness, all things that would be quite normal right now, unfortunately. But feel free, your student can either complete that and submit it, or you can on their behalf. And then the last thing is, if you have either for your own student or another family that you're aware of, there's crisis resources there. So we want to make sure that everybody has support, whether it's a crisis line, in the middle of the night, or just some mental health resources. So please, don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to support and advocate for your kids and also provide you resources. So.
And I popped this slide deck in the chat so you guys can access these as links. And remember, this slide deck is always the same slide deck that we use every single meeting, and it's linked to the meeting invite that you get in your calendar. So there's a lot of ways to access it. So thank you so much, Ms. Curtis, for those resources. Last thing that I need to say, there we go, there it is. So our next meeting will be on the 30th, 2 weeks from tonight. And it says on there topics based on input and feedback, but actually for sure, I know what we're going to be talking about because I just got off the phone with Dr. Wood. We're going to be talking about timeline and input on, when we are ready to go to hybrid and start having kids back on campus. This is going to be a big conversation where we really need, as many voices as possible to get the information out accurately, but also, get input and get your feedback, because it's super complicated and very fraught with all sorts of different pieces. You guys got an email from Dr. Wood last Friday with just like here's the status quo from the state and from the county. And so nothing is changing immediately. We're not like talking about this for tomorrow or for October 1st or anything like that, but really want to make sure that we're being diligent in our planning and our preparation. Sixth grade parents, you might have heard me today talking to your sixth graders a little bit about this. I've been getting a lot of questions from the kids. And so I kind of did a very, very pared down version of what was in the email that you guys got last Friday with the sixth graders today. And I'm going to do that with seventh and eighth graders next week in class meetings, just so that they are aware of what conversations are happening. So I hope that not only can you make it next Wednesday, but you can encourage some other folks to come too. So that is sort of the end of what I had to talk about. If I'm going to stop screen sharing for a second so y'all can see our faces, and I'm going to hold this picture up to the screen. So this is my child and his class of 4-year-olds doing yoga in their masks. And there are many things about this picture that make me sad, like that there can only be 8 kids in their class and, that they have to wear masks all day long. But there's many things in that picture that make me happy that, they're figuring out how to do it. And that was last week when they couldn't go outside. So they did some animal pose yoga, and Sam can tell you that he can do flamingo and giraffe and poses that as a yoga teacher, I don't know anything about, but hey, he likes them. And I bring that up just because it is hard, and everybody's doing a really good job. Like both of those things are true. So I just wanted to leave it with that. So with that, I am, 8 kids is much better than 42. With that, I am going to end the live stream so that if there's any